The shock was not just that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were said to be unwelcome at Sandringham. The shock was how final it sounded. No soft landing. No family meeting. No quiet royal fix. Just a hard stop. That is the version now moving through royal circles, and people close to the story say it landed like ice water. One moment there was public talk about family, healing, maybe even summer visits. The next, the message coming out of palace chatter was very different. King Charles had reportedly pulled back, and Sandringham was no longer on the table. Let's talk about what really happened, or at least what many people around this story believe happened. Because this was never just about one house. Sandringham is not some random country estate. In the royal mind, and in the public imagination too, it means something deeper. It is where the family image softens a little. It is where tradition feels personal. Christmas there is not just a date on a calendar. It is a signal. It says who is in, who is close, and who still belongs near the center of the family. So when talk started that Harry and Meghan were being shut out, people did not hear. A visit was cancelled. They heard something colder. They heard, the distance is now official. What many people do not know is that the Sandringham drama seems to have grown from something that looked harmless at first. Harry had reportedly mentioned in public that he and Meghan would be open to coming, maybe even bringing the children. On the surface, it sounded warm, light, almost generous. A son saying he was ready to reconnect with his father. But behind palace walls, some believed the tone was not warm at all. Some thought it was pressure. Because in royal life, nothing is ever just a visit. A stay on royal grounds can mean status. It can mean symbolism. And in some cases, it can mean security arrangements that ordinary people do not even think about. According to people who follow this battle closely, that is where the nerves started to show. Harry's long fight over protection in the UK has already become one of the biggest sore spots in this family story. So when Sandringham came up, some insiders did not hear family longing. They heard leverage. That changed everything. And then there was the children angle. The idea of grandchildren seeing their grandfather sounds lovely when you hear it in a headline. It sounds soft. Human. Hard to refuse. But accounts from royal watchers suggest that inside the palace, this may have landed very differently. Some felt that once the children were brought into the public conversation, the emotional pressure rose fast. If the king said no, he risked looking cruel. If he said yes, he risked looking cornered. That is not a small thing in a family already running on distrust. According to commentators and reporters, the problem was no longer the request. It was the way the request was made. And this is where the story starts to feel less like a family misunderstanding and more like a long, tired war of timing, image, and control. Many are questioning how a private father and son matter became public at all. Why not pick up the phone? Why not send a message through the proper channels? Why let the press become the room where these family conversations happen? For royal observers, that pattern is not new. Again and again, they point to the same cycle. A personal issue becomes public. A public comment creates pressure. Pressure leads to headlines. Headlines create reaction. Reaction hardens positions. Then everyone says they want peace. It is exhausting just to look at. But this particular occasion hit harder because it touched two nerves at once: belonging and money. Belonging, because Sandringham is tied to the heart of royal family life. Money, because security is expensive, public, and politically toxic. Those two things together can turn even a small comment into a palace-level problem. Accounts from journalists and insiders reveal that by the time this reached Charles, views had already hardened. People around the institution were said to be less willing than before to give the benefit of the doubt. What might once have been treated as a family complication was now being read as part of a pattern. And once people start saying, "Here we go again," the mood changes. It becomes less about forgiveness, more about protection. And that is what makes this whole thing feel bigger than one summer invitation. Because if Sandringham has become a line that will not be crossed, then something has shifted inside the monarchy. Quietly maybe. Without a speech. Without a public statement. But shifted all the same. There is another layer too, and it sits underneath all of this like a crack in the floorboards. The Australia trip. At first, that visit looked polished enough. Smiles. Appearances. Charity. Cameras. The usual royal-style package. But according to the people who have been speaking about it since, the mood behind the scenes was very different. For some, that trip was the point where old fears came rushing back. Questions about image. Questions about purpose. Questions about whether public service and private gain were being pushed too close together. That, more than anything, is what people say changed the temperature. Not one comment. Not one visit. A pattern. And once a royal family starts seeing a pattern, it does not look at the next event in isolation. It links it to everything that came before. That is why the Sandringham story spread so fast. It fit. It fit the larger drama of security, trust, status, public pressure, and family strain. It fit the worry that every soft gesture may come with a harder motive behind it. It fit the fear that even reconciliation can become a headline strategy. And if that sounds harsh, it is because the tone around this couple has become harsh. Not everywhere, not from everyone, but enough that each new move now gets inspected like evidence. That is where the real tension lives. Not in one door being shut, but in the feeling that the people inside no longer believe the knock is innocent. To understand why this moment feels so loaded, you have to go back a little. Not all the way to the fairy tale wedding days or the first wave of global excitement, though that matters too. You only have to go back far enough to see how hope slowly turned into suspicion. In the beginning, Harry and Meghan were often framed as the fresh face of the monarchy. Younger. More modern. More direct. Many people were excited by that. In the US especially, they drew huge interest. In the UK, the reaction was more mixed, but there was still curiosity. They looked like a couple who might push the old royal machine into a new age. Then came the split. Stepping back from royal duties changed everything. It changed their role, their funding, their status, and the terms of how they were seen. After that, every public move carried a question behind it. Were they building a new private life, or still trading on royal identity while rejecting royal duty? That question never really went away. And according to many critics, the Australia trip brought it roaring back. On paper, it sounded fine enough. Public appearances. Charity links. A high-profile tour. The kind of thing the Sussexes had done before, and the kind of thing that still attracts cameras fast. But what many people don't know is that the reaction after the trip was not the glowing approval they may have expected. Some reports claimed the public mood in Australia had cooled sharply. Some even said locals had no desire to see a repeat performance. That matters because Australia has long had a warm and emotional tie with the monarchy, even when politics around the crown get complicated. For the mood to turn there, even a little, was seen by commentators as a warning sign. And the reasons offered were not simple. One issue was optics. Meghan was reportedly linked to a luxury wellness event where people were said to have paid large sums for access to a carefully curated experience. Fancy setting. Travel covered. Stylish atmosphere. High-end crowd. None of that is illegal. None of it is even shocking on its own. But the timing mattered. Because around the same period, there had also been a hospital visit involving sick children. That should have been the moment people remembered. But instead, another detail started racing around online: the outfit. Not just mention of it, but shopping links, brand attention, and the suggestion that what was worn during a deeply emotional public visit was also becoming part of a commercial cycle. For some observers, that felt deeply wrong. The line between care and marketing suddenly looked blurred. Not officially. Not openly. But visibly enough. People could not stop asking where compassion ended and branding began. That question hung in the air after the tour. Then came the money issue. Reports suggested that although Harry and Meghan were no longer working royals, parts of the visit still involved major security costs. And once taxpayers enter the picture, the mood always gets sharper. If they were private figures, critics asked, why should public money still be circling around these appearances? That was the kind of debate that leaves a mark. It was not just about whether the tour was successful. It was about whether the whole model made sense anymore. And hovering over all of it was an old warning from Queen Elizabeth II, repeated many times by royal watchers: you cannot easily mix royal-style service with private profit. The two worlds keep crashing into each other. The image gets muddy. Intentions get questioned. People stop knowing whether they are watching duty, business, or performance. That warning now looked less like old-fashioned caution and more like foresight. The pattern seemed to grow from there. When criticism rose, there were more appearances. When public interest slipped, stronger statements seemed to follow. When sympathy appeared, controversy often arrived close behind. That is the pattern many royal reporters now say they have noticed. Not one disaster. A chain of them. A rhythm. And rhythms are dangerous, because once people think they can predict your next move, they stop being surprised by what you say. They just slot it into the pattern and move on. Then came another warning sign: the fading of media protection around them. Figures who had once shaped or carried friendly narratives reportedly shifted positions, changed platforms, or disappeared from the center of the conversation. At the same time, stories about money started sounding less glamorous. Big deals were no longer being spoken about with the same shine. Questions grew around whether certain contracts had lived up to the giant numbers once whispered in headlines. Netflix, Spotify, publishing circles, inheritance talk, security bills, legal costs, production slowdowns. None of this looked like collapse from the outside, but it did start to look like pressure. And pressure changes people. It changes tone. It changes urgency. It changes judgment. Some analysts began arguing that the couple still needed each other because each carried something the other lacked. His title, her management, his royal link, her ability to shape the brand. Whether or not that is fair, it became part of the wider commentary. And once those kinds of ideas take hold, every new public move gets read through the lens of strategy rather than sincerity. That is a hard place to live in. It is also a hard place to come back from. Because if the world starts reading you as calculated, even your softest gestures stop feeling soft. Even family ones. So by the time Sandringham came into the conversation, the ground under that story was already unstable. The backstory was full of bruises, arguments over duty, fights over money, public image trouble, and growing doubt from people who once wanted the best for them. Then came the moment that pushed the whole thing into darker territory. A speech. A trip. A terrible bit of timing. And after that, the family argument no longer looked like only a family argument. It started to look international. The mood reportedly changed fast when Prince Harry appeared in Ukraine. On another day, in another season, that might have been framed as a compassionate visit or a personal act of support. But on this particular occasion, the timing turned it into something far more explosive. Just days later, King Charles was said to be preparing for a major state visit to Washington. Reports also said he was dealing with serious health strain and even adjusting cancer treatment around royal duty. That alone would have made the palace tense. Then came Harry's visible appearance abroad, and with it, a speech that commentators claimed touched on political ground. That is when the alarms really started. 4 days before the king was due to step into a delicate diplomatic setting, his son was suddenly making headlines with remarks that were seen by some as politically charged. In royal life, timing is never just timing. People notice it. They measure it. They compare events side by side and ask the question nobody likes to ask out loud: accident or message? Many are questioning how Harry could not have seen the problem. His father was preparing for a huge official moment. Every word around a state visit matters. Every mood matters. Every relationship matters. Yet here was Harry, stepping into a conflict zone and, according to reports, making comments that some believed could complicate already sensitive conversations. That did not look careless to everyone. To some, it looked familiar. Because accounts from journalists and insiders reveal that one of the deepest frustrations inside palace circles has been the repeated collision between Sussex media moments and major royal events. A big interview lands near a state occasion. A personal statement breaks around a formal duty. A family complaint arrives just as the institution is trying to project stability. Once may be bad luck. Twice may be awkward. By the time it becomes a pattern, people stop calling it coincidence. And from there, the emotional fallout gets worse. Imagine the scene from Charles's side, as described by commentators. A king under physical strain. A demanding trip ahead. Doctors, staff, briefing papers, international expectations, and then, on top of that, a fresh controversy involving his own son. Whether Harry meant to create that burden or not, the effect was the same. It added weight to an already heavy week. That is what made palace frustration sound so sharp in the reports that followed. Not just anger. Weariness. A kind of deep, tired disbelief. Prince William's name came up in some commentary too, often linked to concern about stress and health. People around the family have long spoken about how emotional pressure can affect recovery and judgment. So when another public storm hit at exactly the wrong time, it was reportedly not seen as one more headline. It was seen as part of a serious problem. And then the crisis spread beyond palace emotion into legal and political talk. Some commentators brought up the Logan Act in the United States, not necessarily to say Harry had broken it, but to suggest that his actions touched on the spirit of why such laws exist. The idea is simple. Private people are not meant to drift into spaces reserved for official diplomacy. Harry is not a government figure. He does not speak for a state. So when a high-profile royal-born private citizen appears on a politically sensitive stage, the questions start immediately. Who sent him? Who backed this? What authority did he think he had? Was it symbolic only, or something more? Even when no clear law is broken, the optics alone can be disastrous. That phrase, in different forms, turned up again and again in commentary around the trip. And once those questions were in the air, people went back to Australia and looked at everything through a new lens. Some began asking whether the Ukraine appearance was partly about resetting the narrative after the tour fallout. If Australia had bruised the image, was Ukraine meant to restore seriousness, relevance, and moral weight? Nobody could prove that. But people asked it anyway. That is how crises grow. Not only through facts, but through the questions facts invite. The fallout then spread in several directions at once. Public trust. Family trust. Media trust. Institutional trust. Every group seemed to be reading the same set of events differently, yet all were arriving at the same conclusion. This situation was getting harder to contain. Online reaction became louder. Critics argued that enough was enough. Some wanted stronger royal boundaries. Some wanted titles addressed. Some wanted a full separation between private projects and official identity. Others said the palace itself was partly to blame for allowing gray areas to survive this long. There was no neat answer. Only more pressure. And underneath the headlines, the security battle kept grinding on. Harry's fight to restore police protection in the UK had already turned into one of the biggest institutional standoffs in the saga. That made every visit, every invitation, every return to Britain more complicated than it looked on paper. Sandringham was now tied not only to family feeling, but to hard logistics. Who protects whom? Who pays? Who decides? Who carries the risk if something goes wrong? That is why the crisis began to feel locked from every angle. If protection is granted, people ask why taxpayers should cover someone no longer serving as a working royal. If it is not granted, others ask whether the family is failing in duty of care. Every answer creates a fresh argument. By now, the confrontation was no longer about one speech or one estate. It was about whether Harry and Meghan could still move in royal-adjacent spaces without dragging the institution into fresh conflict each time. That is the question hovering over Sandringham. That is the question hovering over titles. That is the question hovering over every new headline. And still, even with all of that out in the open, the full truth was still to come. Because once people started looking past the family pain, they found something even more powerful underneath it. Symbolism, belonging, exclusion, and the quiet public meaning of being left outside a royal gate. The full picture, as many commentators now see it, is not really about one invitation and not even only about one family feud. It is about what Sandringham stands for. Sandringham is where royal belonging becomes visible. That is why exclusion from it feels so brutal. Unlike palaces tied closely to state work and ceremony, Sandringham has long been imagined as something softer and more private. It is bound up with Christmas, old habits, family meals, church walks, and the idea that beyond the crown there is still a family. That image matters. It matters to the public, and it matters inside the monarchy too. So if Harry and Meghan are truly being kept away, the meaning is heavy. It says this is no passing quarrel. It says trust has thinned to almost nothing. It says the monarchy may be drawing a line not just around property, but around identity itself. Accounts from journalists, royal commentators, and longtime watchers reveal that this is why the reaction has been so intense. People are not talking only about who visits where. They are talking about who still counts as part of the emotional center of the royal family. Sandringham becomes a symbol in that debate. Not a building. A verdict. And when symbols change, public feeling changes with them. That helps explain the decline in popularity many polls have suggested over time. In both the UK and the US, support for Harry and Meghan has reportedly become less stable, more divided, and more sensitive to each controversy. Moments of sympathy still happen. But they often fade quickly. Then another interview, another appearance, another argument brings the old divisions straight back. In Britain, that decline has looked steeper. The reasons are not mysterious. Duty matters in Britain. Continuity matters. The public can forgive a lot, but it struggles with the idea of attacking the institution while still drawing power from its name. In America, the view has been more mixed, but even there, the early glow has softened. Curiosity remains. Strong trust does not. That is the social truth beneath the family one. Their image no longer grows. It gets tested. Again and again. And each test leaves marks. Public reaction to this latest chapter has shown that very clearly. Across online discussions and commentary, one demand keeps returning. If Harry and Meghan no longer serve the institution, then the institution should make that separation plain. Some call for ceremonial titles to be revisited. Some want clearer public guidance that the Sussexes do not represent the crown. Some believe Charles has the authority to act and simply does not want a bigger war. That debate is now part of the story too. Critics say royal hesitation has let confusion thrive. Supporters of restraint say harsh action would only deepen the wounds and give the couple more material for a public counterattack. Both views carry weight, which is why the monarchy appears stuck between caution and clarity. And then there is the money. Because money always returns. Reports of shrinking deals, high costs, slow projects, inheritance pressure, and endless security battles have added a harsh edge to the public reading of events. Fair or unfair, many now view every new move through a practical lens. Is this about principle, or survival? Is this a statement of belief, or a brand adjustment? Is this a family gesture, or a negotiation by other means? Once that lens settles over a public figure, it is very hard to remove. The aftermath of all this is not clean. There has been no grand ending. No final declaration. No dramatic palace speech setting out where everyone stands. Instead, the consequences are unfolding in slow motion. Harder public judgment. More institutional distance. More legal struggle. More fragile trust. Less room for error. And maybe that is the real truth of this entire story. Not that one side is perfectly right and the other perfectly wrong. But that years of strain have made every move look strategic, every silence look deliberate, and every family moment feel loaded with consequence. That is a miserable place for any family to reach. It is even worse when the family is also a monarchy. Because ordinary families can fall apart in private. Royal families do it in public, with cameras, court cases, headlines, and people around the world reading meaning into every glance and every door that stays shut. So where does that leave Harry and Meghan? Still famous, of course. Still watched. Still able to command attention. But attention is not the same as trust, and visibility is not the same as belonging. Where does that leave Charles? Trying, it seems, to balance fatherhood, monarchy, illness, duty, public feeling, and the impossible demand to be both merciful and firm at the same time. Where does that leave Sandringham? As a symbol. Maybe the strongest one in the whole story. A place that says, without saying a word, who is inside the family circle and who is standing out in the cold. That is why this story has gripped people. Not because it is only about royals, or speeches, or estates, or titles. It has gripped people because underneath all the ceremony, it is about something painfully human. Trust once broken. Love mixed with pride. Family mixed with power. And the quiet, lasting wound of not knowing whether the door closed because of one moment, or because too many moments came before it.